A young American adjusted his cap while sitting in front of his computer and went live. There were instantly thousands of listeners in the chat room. It was no accident, because Jeff Coates is quite a popular coach. Using the example of his own life, he will once again tell you how to achieve your goals. He started selling real estate at the age of 30 with no prior experience. Moreover, the man had just received his license. In his first year in the profession, he assembled a team that sold 35 homes. That's not a pair of sneakers on the market. That's a home in Washington State. Jeff bought a car and the coveted Harley Davidson. The American was doing well. He was growing the business, making a lot of money. His team was growing. More and more, he wanted to do. Still, Jeff decided to take a few weeks of vacation in Indonesia. There, among the jungle and the sea, the successful businessman suddenly realized that he didn't need all that stuff. Do you think Jeff's story is not much different from many other rich people? Not at all, because it started out quite differently. Jeff grew up in total poverty. His stepfather abused the boy, and his mother could not protect him. Already, one would think that this is what drove the future successful businessman to change his life. But no, the abuse in his own family led to 11-year-old Jeff being taken away from his mother. That's how he first came to adoptive parents. Many families took in children for short periods of time. Others did not work out for other reasons. As a result, over the course of just 3 years, the boy was moved to new foster homes 62 times, until Jeff found his new home. At the age of 13, a teenager really wanted to own his own car. He shared his desires with his older friends and they came up with a plan. All they needed to make it happen was a roll of duct tape. It was 1994. Jeff and two 17-year-old boys decided to steal a car. They chose Tacoma resident David Grenier as their victim. The 3 teenagers tied him up with duct tape, taped his mouth shut, and stuffed him in the trunk of his own BMW. The kids clearly didn't know what they were doing. The teens had not thought through the plan of action and had not thought of anything. They just wanted to have their own car. So the kidnapped man, who was not going to give up easily to his offenders, waited for the right moment and ran away. The criminals were caught immediately. Jeffrey Coates was charged with robbery, kidnapping, and attempted murder. The 14-year-old was tried as an adult. The verdict was 20 years in prison. The photo from the police station where Jeffrey is holding a sign with the number 733808 was taken on April 27, 1995. It can now be easily found on the internet. The photo was even located on the home pages of Coates' official website. But before that was possible, the American spent 17 years, 3 months, and 21 days behind bars. One can only imagine the desperation of 14-year-old Jeff. The boy found himself among tough criminals. He was going to spend more time in prison than he had ever spent in his life. The teenager knew he had to get his bearings as quickly as possible. His life depended on it. Jeffrey met an inmate named Big Tom. He told him the prison rules of the 3 F's, which, for cultural reasons, cannot be quoted verbatim. The gist of it was that there were only 3 ways out of any situation: try to escape, let yourself be manipulated, or fight. And Jeffrey accepted the rules of the game. He started hustling to survive. The guy did a lot of things he shouldn't have done, but that was the harsh reality. Coates had spent many years behind bars and lived well by prison standards. He even had a cell phone, which of course is forbidden to an inmate. In all that time, his mother never visited him. They haven't seen or spoken in 13 years. But not because the woman disowned the child. She was so poor that she couldn't pay her way to the prison where her son was serving his sentence. One day, Jeffrey was on the phone with his mother's best friend. He knew the woman well and knew something was wrong. It turned out that his closest person was dying of cancer. Coates learned that he could see his mother. He was only allowed 1 hour. After spending virtually all of his savings, he went to see his mother in the hospital. It was this trip that switched something in his mind. As he crossed the bridge and looked out over the water, Jeffrey thought of all of his foster homes. He thought of the things he had to do behind bars. On the way to his dying mother, the boy analyzed his actions and life. Jeffrey thoughtfully asked 2 life-changing questions. Do I hold my mother responsible for the life I've had up to this point? Or should I let it all go and give her the best hour of her life? Coates spent the allowed 60 minutes with his mother, telling her how much he loved her and that she was the best in the world. Back in prison, Jeffrey made a conscious decision to change his life. The kid started fighting a lot less and reading a lot more. Then he became interested in books by Robert Kiyosaki, author of the famous bestseller, Rich Dad, Poor Dad. He began to test his first business skills while he was still incarcerated. Jeff realized he loved it and began to study even more literature. Then he decided he was going to sell real estate, and he put all his energy into learning the business. Jeffrey Coates came out early, almost 3 years early. He thought positively, knew what he wanted to do. The man immediately went to take the exam to get the license he needed, but he didn't make it. The ex-con faced a harsh reality in which he was judged and feared. Nevertheless, Coates was no weakling, and he was not going to give up. Some people, when they heard his life story, felt sympathy for him. Others, on the contrary, admired the man and supported him. Jeffrey learned that there are many professions that can be practiced without a state license. When he got out, he began to get acquainted with the internet and became interested in the IT field. He knocked on all the doors and found people who gave him a chance. At the same time, Coates did not give up trying to obtain a license. He learned that Washington state did not prohibit the issuance of such a document to ex-convicts. True, he was told this only in conversation and warned that much paperwork would have to be gathered. That's all Jeffrey needed to know. He filled out and sent in the necessary paperwork while continuing to read and study, and eventually he was given an exam date. Even then, only a year after his release, he attended university classes where he told his story. After another lecture, Coates went out to dinner. At a nearby table sat a man with an extremely concentrated and serious look. Jeffrey did not know him, but as the stranger looked incredibly immersed in his gadget, he could not help himself. Coates turned to his neighbor and sincerely advised him to smile. The man took his eyes off the phone and asked for the name of the man who had disturbed him. Jeffrey answered and asked his name. The man said his name was Ben Kinney. For several more years, Coates would not know who he had met that day and how fateful that meeting would be for him. Ben Kinney is an internationally known writer and coach. He is also the owner of one of the best real estate sales companies in the US and the founder of 2 successful startups. 3 years after they met, Ben invited Jeff to a lecture. It turned out to be in another city, and Coates had to spend a lot of money on a ticket. His phone ran out of charge on the way. It wasn't a problem until the man walked into the auditorium where the lecture was being held. There were 15,000 sales agents in the crowded room. Jeff had no idea how he would find his friend in that crowd. And when Ben Kinney took the stage, Jeff found out for the first time who it was he had met at the restaurant. Soon, Coates finally got his license and became part of a large and successful company. The practice turned out to be completely different from the theory. Jeff didn't know how to call clients, where to find them, what words to say. Then he remembered Big Tom's prison rule and made the decision to fight. In just 1 year, the ex-con became a rich man. He achieved long-awaited success in his coveted profession and was finally able to afford a vacation to Indonesia. Then Jeff realized that he no longer needed all he had. There, he made the decision to write a book about his life, as friends had long advised him. Coates did not really believe that his biography, however eventful, would be of interest to readers. Besides, he wanted to help people. So in his book, he didn't just talk about what happened to him. He formulated 8 rules that could change lives. Since then, Jeff began to help people, just as he had dreamed of doing. His story caught the attention of University of Washington professor Catherine Beckett. Together with a group of students and University of British Columbia Radio, they decided to make a documentary about former prisoners, where they sought to show that many do not return to prison, but succeed on the outside. To do this, the team members found other people who had changed dramatically since their imprisonment. They even contacted Coates' victim, David Grenier. The man at first refused, but then he wondered what had happened to his abuser. Jeff himself one day packed up his belongings, took his dog, and moved to Belize to work. He continues to lecture the inmates, and when they get out, he becomes their mentor. Coates hasn't forgotten how important the people who gave him a chance became on his way to a new life. Now Jeff can be called one of the popular personal growth coaches. His book and lectures are aimed at those who need a push to develop. Coates himself never ceases to assert that everyone can change and that all it takes is a little. Just give a person a chance. For most people, the story of Jeff Coates seems more like an exception to the rule. And what do you think? Are people able to change because someone believed in them at the right moment and supported them? Leave your thoughts in the comments and don't forget to like this video.